I didn't mean to collapse that day. I didn't even realize I was that close. When people say burnout, they make it sound poetic, like a candle dying out after shining too long. But it wasn't fire that took me down. It was silence. The kind that fills an office when everyone knows you're not okay, but no one wants to be the one to say it. I remember the hum of the fluorescent lights above my desk, the way they flickered at the edges of my vision. My inbox was a graveyard of urgent emails, all from Martin Hale, my boss. Every subject line started the same way. Follow up ASAP. Everyone ended with a period sharp enough to cut. It was Tuesday, or maybe Wednesday. Those days had stopped having names, just deadlines. I'd been at Hale and Kinsey for 5 years. Project management, mid-level, reliable. That was my curse. Reliable people don't break, right? When I felt the first wave of dizziness, I thought it was hunger. I hadn't eaten since breakfast. Half a muffin, black coffee. Martin had called me in that morning to go over some numbers. What that meant was sit quietly while he tore apart a report I'd spent 3 weekends perfecting. "You need to take ownership, Ethan," he'd said, pacing behind his glass desk. "You're good at keeping things running, but you're not proactive." That word, proactive, was his favorite weapon. He'd throw it at anyone doing too much work to defend themselves. I nodded, like I always did. I needed the job. My mortgage didn't care about Martin's moods. By noon, I was back at my desk, rewriting a presentation he'd already approved 2 weeks ago. My heart was doing that thing, a flutter, like it skipped a beat and had to double back to catch itself. I ignored it. I always ignored it. At 2:37 p.m., my coworker Sarah passed by. "Hey, you good?" she asked, half smiling. I must have looked pale. "Yeah, just tired," I said. My throat felt dry. The screen blurred for a second. "Don't let him kill you, Ethan," she said, laughing lightly. "Funny thing about those jokes, they age fast." By 3 p.m., my left hand was trembling when I tried to type. I stood to stretch. The world tilted, like someone had kicked the floor out from under me. My ears rang. I remember trying to grab the edge of my desk, but my fingers didn't obey. Then, nothing. When I woke up, I was lying on the carpet beside the cubicle divider. Someone was shouting my name. Someone else was on the phone. My shirt was damp with sweat. I tried to sit up, but my body wasn't interested. "He's conscious," a voice said. I blinked up at the ceiling tiles. They looked cleaner than usual. "Ambulance is on the way," another voice said. I wanted to tell them to cancel it, to say I was fine. But all that came out was a rasp. The paramedics arrived fast. They asked questions I couldn't answer. Name, time, what I'd eaten. My mind was full of static. I remember someone asking if they should call my emergency contact. "His boss?" someone said. They called Martin. He didn't answer. They called again. Straight to voicemail. I wanted to laugh. That was Martin. First in, last out, always in a meeting when someone else needed him. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I caught a glimpse of my monitor. The presentation I'd been revising was still open, deadline in bold red letters at the top. The ride to the hospital was mostly noise, sirens, questions, the dull hum of the engine. I remember looking at the ceiling of the ambulance and thinking, maybe this will finally make him notice. But even in that moment, I knew better. I woke up in a hospital bed with an IV in my arm and a monitor beeping somewhere to my right. My throat was raw. The nurse said I'd collapse from severe dehydration and exhaustion. My blood pressure had spiked. My heart rhythm was irregular. She said I was lucky someone found me when they did. "Someone from work?" I asked, my voice cracked. She nodded. "A woman named Sarah, I think. She rode in with you." Of course it was Sarah. She was decent like that. I checked my phone. 17 missed calls. None from Martin. 1 from HR, labeled Incident Follow-Up. There was a text, though, from him. Just 1 line. "Take the rest of the week. We'll discuss next steps, Monday." Next steps, like collapsing at my desk, was a performance review item. I stared at the message until the words blurred. My head felt too heavy for the pillow. I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was small. Sarah stopped by that evening with flowers and a coffee that tasted like mercy. "He never called?" she asked quietly. "No," I said. She shook her head. "He told AITA it was a personal medical issue, not work-related." I laughed, short, bitter. "Of course he did." "Ethan, you should file something. You've been covering 3 roles since Layla quit." "Yeah," I said, not meaning it. I was too tired to fight. But that night, lying in the half-dark room, I couldn't stop thinking about it. How easily a person could almost die in an office full of people and still be written off as a productivity glitch. I thought about Martin's voice in those meetings. The way he'd say, "We're a family here," whenever he needed someone to stay late. Families don't let you hit the floor. The heart monitor beeped steadily beside me. Every beat was a reminder I survived something that should have changed everything. But it didn't. Not yet. Because the real collapse, the one that would destroy everything Martin built, hadn't happened yet. It was still coming. And it started with one wrong email. But that was just the beginning. The morning after the collapse, HR called while the nurse swapped my IV bag. "Ethan, this is Marla from People Operations. How are you feeling?" Her voice had the softness of a throw blanket and the structure of a contract. "Like I lost an argument with gravity," I said. "Right. Well, we're logging yesterday as a personal health incident. We'll route sick leave accordingly. No need to worry about work." "No need?" I stared at the ceiling. I was on a deadline Martin assigned. A microsecond pause. "We wouldn't want to speculate about causality. Rest up. We'll touch base Monday." After she hung up, the room felt louder. The monitor, the hallway cartwheels, a distant TV. None of it drowned out the sentence that kept replaying. Personal health incident. Like I'd tripped over my own shadow. When they discharged me that night with instructions to hydrate and reduce stressors, I took a rideshare home and sat on my couch in the dark. My apartment sounded like itself again. The hum of the fridge. The old heater clicking on. I opened my laptop and wrote down everything I remembered from the past 30 days. The late nights, the extra work after Layla quit, the emails with timestamps that stretched into midnight. It wasn't rage, not yet. It was inventory. If they were going to call it personal, I would make the personal part indisputable. Monday came. The elevator doors opened on 6 and spit me into an office that smelled like hand sanitizer and microwaved leftovers. People looked at me, then looked away, like eye contact had become hazardous. Sarah met me by my desk with a paper cup. "Water," she said. "Today you're a plant." I smiled, barely. "He around?" She tilted her head toward the glass corner office. Martin stood inside, back to the room. Phone to ear like a CEO in a recruitment brochure. He saw me in the reflection, nodded once without moving his face, and turned his shoulder. At 9:15, I got a calendar ping, 10 a.m. Catch up, Wahogi, Martin, and HR, Marla joining. The subject line had that period he liked to use when he wanted the room to be smaller. In the conference room, he started with a brand of concern that should have come with a trademark symbol. "Ethan, you gave us a scare." He folded his hands. "We care about you as a person." Marla smiled, supportive. "Absolutely. Your health is the priority." I waited. "And the workload?" Martin spread his hands. "We can lighten things. Temporarily. But let's be adults. Deadlines don't move themselves." "Neither do people on stretchers," I said. Another microsecond. Martin's jaw ticked, then smoothed. "We're on the same team." I kept my voice even. "I'm filing a formal incident report. For record keeping." Marla nodded too quickly. "Of course. We actually drafted a note you can sign. I'll write my own." That was the first tiny click in the room. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a boundary sliding into place. Back at my desk, my computer choked on messages. I opened a new doc titled Timeline. I pasted in calendar invites, copied emails, subject lines with dates, added the call log from the day I went down. Sarah slid into the chair beside me. You good? I will be, I said. At lunch, Martin swung by my cube, forearms braced on the top like the start of a lecture. Look, I know you've been stretched. Everyone has. We're in a grow or die phase. I'm not interested in either, I said. He smiled like I'd made a joke. Take the afternoon to breathe, and no more theatrics, okay? I stared at him. I collapsed. He tightened, then recovered. Figure of speech. He tapped the cube wall twice. Chin up. That was the flavor of injustice that sticks in your teeth. The part where someone renames what happened to you and expects you to nod along. I sent the incident report at 3:12 p.m., CCing HR, facilities. They love timestamps. And the generic compliance inbox no one reads until a lawyer asks for it. I wrote what was true. The hours, the directives, the ignored call, the personal label, the hospital paperwork with the diagnosis the nurse had written in her careful block letters. I didn't add adjectives. I didn't need to. By 4, Marla replied with a form attachment and the phrase, "Appreciate your transparency." Martin responded with, "Let's reset expectations going forward," and a bulleted list that looked suspiciously like my old workload, with new headings. I printed every message and slid them into a folder. Papers quiet. Quiet travels. That week, people kept stopping by my desk to say versions of the same sentence. Take it easy. It sounded less like kindness and more like a request. Don't make this louder. I nodded, drank water, left at 5 like it was illegal to stay. Every goodbye from Martin had a chummy edge to it. Get some rest, champ, like he'd coached me through a cramp. On Thursday, I met with HR again. This time, Marla had a stranger with her, a man in a navy suit, who introduced himself as Risk. No last name. He asked me if I had a history of fainting. He asked about caffeine. He asked if I exercised. He did not ask about 2 a.m. email chains or Saturday deck reviews. I answered what mattered. I have a history of doing the work of 3 people for the salary of 1. I'm adjusting that. He smiled without teeth. Good to hear. They offered me 3 days of flex. Not time off, not medical leave. Flex. A word that meant, if we give you this, you'll give us quiet. I took it. Silence can be currency if you're careful with the exchange rate. On my first flex afternoon, I saw Layla's name in my phone and called her. She answered on the second ring, the sound of traffic in the background. You still alive? She asked. Technically, I said. Tell me I'm not crazy. You're not crazy, she said. You're late. I left so I wouldn't be a story they got to tell about themselves. Martin's thing is pretending care while delegating harm. How'd you make it stick? I asked. Documentation and timing, she said. Don't swing, pull a thread. That night I went through my email archives and found all the places Martin had written family. I highlighted them and then highlighted the corresponding nights I'd ordered delivery at my desk at 10:41 p.m. because families apparently meet their goals quarterly. The pattern looked like an X-ray. You don't need to be a doctor to see the fracture. Friday morning, he called a stand-up in the bullpen, the kind where he liked to perform leadership for anyone walking by. Gang, we're streamlining. No more heroics. We do smart work. He looked at me on the word heroics, like it had my name on it. People chuckled. Sarah stared at him like he'd grown a second head. After the meeting, she whispered, He just turned your collapse into a brand strategy. I noticed, I said. I spent the afternoon cleaning my desk like someone about to move apartments. Not because I planned to quit, not yet, but because order felt like rebellion. I labeled a new folder, Health. Inside it, discharge papers, a copy of my report, a note from my primary care appointment, where the doctor had written, Patient presence with work-related stressors. Recommends workload reduction. It was a sentence in black ink, not an opinion. Opinions evaporate. Ink stays. On Saturday morning, I woke without an alarm and felt not good, but steady. I bought a cheap printer for home and fed it every piece of paper that mattered. I made a list of people who told the truth when asked. Sarah, Facilities Joe, the nurse who wrote the note. I made a shorter list of people who didn't. Martin, Risk, the group chat that had, "You okay?" and then, "Let's not make drama," within 5 minutes of each other. Sunday evening, Martin texted, "Big week. Need you sharp, Monday. We're in front of the execs Wednesday. Pull the decks together and make sure the numbers line up to the narrative." There it was, the little corporate confession tucked into a sentence. Numbers lining up to narrative, not the other way around. I replied, "I'll make sure the narrative lines up to the truth." He sent a thumbs up, which made the sentence funnier. Monday, 8:02 a.m., I walked in with a thermos of water and a folder that felt heavier than paper should. 9:30, HR sent a calendar hold for a wellness check-in. 9:34, Martin forwarded me a thread with the subject, "Exec Prep," messaging, and told me to clean it up. I opened it, skimmed the platitudes, and kept moving. At 10:12, Sarah pinged me. "You okay?" "You look like a spreadsheet with legs," I typed back. I'm done being a friendly document. At 11:47, I submitted the deck draft to Martin and went to the kitchen for more water. When I came back, there was a new unread email sitting near the top of my inbox with a subject line that didn't look like it was meant for me. Same thread title, different chain. My name wasn't on the to line. It wasn't on CC either. It had the little arrow next to it. Forwarded. From Martin. I hovered over it for a second, pulse doing the low drum of a decision warming up. I clicked. The first line hit like a neon sign in a dark room. He wasn't writing to me. He was writing about me. My hands went very still on the desk. In the bullpen, phones rang, chairs scooted, someone laughed at a joke. The noise went on, regular as weather. And then silence. The kind that means something's gone wrong. They thought I was too weak to fight back. The email sat there, glowing against the gray of my monitor like a wound that hadn't stopped bleeding. Martin hadn't meant to send it to me. He'd forwarded it from his phone, probably hitting the wrong autocomplete. My name, instead of Mark Hale, the CFO. Same initials, different fate. I scrolled slowly, eyes tracing every word. Ethan's collapse was a gift in disguise. We can finally make a case for streamlining his role. He's a dependable workhorse, but not leadership material. Let HR manage the narrative. Last thing we need is him milking sympathy. A gift. That's what he called it. A gift. Below that, another reply from the CFO. Agree. Optics are good if we frame it as stress management, spin it as part of our wellness initiative. They were talking about my body giving out as a wellness initiative. I stared at the screen until my pulse steadied. Rage came, but not like fire. It came like ice, clean, precise, directional. Every instinct that had told me to play nice, to survive quietly, switched off. I didn't reply. Not yet. I just hit print. The machine hummed like a conspirator. When the page slid out, I folded it once, slid it into the folder labeled Health, and locked it in my drawer. Then I stood up, walked to the break room, and poured myself coffee like it was just another Monday. Sarah glanced over from the counter. "You okay?" I looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled, a small, calm thing. "Better," I said. She frowned. "That sounds dangerous." "Maybe," I said, "but I'll live." That night, I stayed in the office long after everyone left. The cleaning crew passed by, vacuum humming in slow loops. I plugged in my headphones, not to listen to anything, but to look busy. Then I opened Outlook again and started digging. Every thread Martin had forwarded, every internal note he'd BCC'd himself on. The patterns were all there. Manipulation written in corporate language. Each shift accountability. Narrative management. Redirect optics. Phrases that looked harmless until you laid them side by side. I started saving copies, not to the company drive, not to my email, but to a secure folder I'd built on a personal encrypted drive months ago for my own projects. I renamed the folder Wellness Review 2023 Zip. Irony was free storage. By 1 a.m., I had 43 documents, memos, chat logs, slide decks, evidence not of crime but of character, and sometimes that's worse. When I finally left the building, the city was half asleep, half waiting for morning. I felt neither. That night, I stopped being the victim. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I called in flex. No one questioned it, probably assumed I was having another wellness issue. Instead, I drove to a cafe 3 blocks from the office, the kind of place with low light and high patience. I ordered black coffee, opened my laptop, and drafted an email. Not to Martin, to the Board of Directors, Compliance, and Investor Relations. Subject: urgent. Misrepresentation of employee incident. Hale and Kinsey. No adjectives, no emotion, just data, attached and chronological. I included timestamps, internal quotes, and HR's signed summary, labeling my collapse as personal. The final attachment, the email he'd sent by mistake. I ended it simply. This document trail suggests deliberate misrepresentation to protect an executive from accountability. Please confirm receipt and advise on the appropriate internal audit channel. Ethan Cole. Then I hit send. No drama, no second draft, just the sound of a cup being set down on a table. By noon, the chain reaction began. First, a read receipt, then another. Then silence, the administrative kind that means people are checking who else saw it. At 3 p.m., Marla called. Her voice was tighter than usual. "Ethan, we received your note. That's a serious claim." "I didn't make a claim," I said. "I submitted documents. Claims are opinions. Documents are facts." She exhaled through her nose. "Compliance will likely reach out. Please don't discuss this with other employees." "Of course," I said. "I'm resting." That night, I slept like someone who'd stopped auditioning for mercy. The following week, the office changed temperature. People whispered less when I walked by, not because they weren't talking, but because they didn't know what to say. Martin's door stayed closed all day. HR meetings doubled. There was a routine audit announced in an all-staff email. No mention of me, but the timing wasn't subtle. Sarah caught up to me at the elevator. "You did something, didn't you?" "Maybe," I said. She grinned, half worried. "You look lighter." Feels like gravity finally took someone else for a ride. The doors opened. I didn't say goodbye. The audit arrived disguised as a quarterly performance transparency review. Corporate camouflage for an internal investigation. I watched from my cubicle as suits I'd never seen before paraded in and out of Martin's office. He came out once, pale and clipped, the way people look when the world stops orbiting around them. He saw me. Just for a second. I smiled, not taunting, just acknowledging, like we were finally in the same room, breathing the same air. That afternoon, I got an email from compliance. They thanked me for my detailed documentation and informed me that an external review had been opened. That's corporate, for we're not trusting HR to bury this one. Martin didn't show up the next day. "Family emergency," his assistant said. I wondered if that's what he called accountability now. 2 weeks later, the board scheduled a transparency town hall. The announcement was framed as a celebration of company values. I knew better. It was the sound of an organization trying to clean itself with fire. Sarah sat next to me in the back of the conference room. "Is this about—" "Wait," I said. At exactly 10 a.m., the CFO walked to the podium. "We've had a challenging quarter," he said, "but challenges clarify." He clicked the remote. A slide appeared on the screen, a chain of emails. The subject line, Wellness Optics. My email. Martin's words, word for word. Gasps moved through the room like a windstorm. The CFO didn't look at me. He didn't have to. "Integrity," he said, "isn't a slogan. It's our foundation." The next slide was a brief statement. Effective immediately, Martin Hale is no longer employed by Hale and Kinsey. Sarah turned toward me, eyes wide. I didn't react. My hands stayed folded in my lap. Calm isn't silence. It's victory learning to to breathe. That evening, I packed my things, not because I was fired, they wouldn't dare, but because the air in that place was finished for me. I left my badge on the desk, next to a note that said, "Thank you for the opportunity to rest." Outside, the city felt larger. The sky wasn't brighter, but it looked honest. I took the long way home, past the office windows glowing like empty aquariums. Somewhere in there, Martin's nameplate was already gone. They thought I'd collapse and vanish. Instead, I stood up quietly and rewrote the ending. And yet, even as satisfaction settled in, a small thought whispered at the edge of my mind, the kind that doesn't let you close the book yet. Because when people like Martin fall, they don't fall alone. They try to pull something down with them, and that's exactly what he tried next. The hearing took months, but time moves differently when you're not drowning. I showed up in a clean shirt, no lawyer, just a folder of facts. They asked about overtime, work conditions, HR procedure. I told the truth. When it was over, one of the investigators said quietly, "You know, cases like this rarely go anywhere, but this one might." 2 months later, I got the letter. Settlement reached. Independent review confirms mismanagement of workload and neglect of employee welfare. Compensation approved. It wasn't the money that mattered, though it paid off the last of my mortgage. It was the line that followed. Policy recommendations submitted to the board for reform. That's how you know you've won in silence. When the system that buried you starts whispering your name as a cautionary tale. I never posted about it, never bragged. I didn't need applause. I'd learned where noise leads. But word got around anyway. A recruiter from a smaller firm reached out, said they'd heard about my case, offered me a job building a healthier team structure, less hierarchy, more sanity. I said yes. It wasn't glamorous. The pay was smaller. But the days were clean. Meetings ended when they were supposed to. People went home before sunset. I learned what breathing at work actually felt like. Sometimes when I stay late, by choice, I catch my reflection in the office window and almost don't recognize myself. The posture's different, lighter, like someone who finally put down a weight he'd been carrying so long he forgot it wasn't part of his body. A few weeks ago, Sarah texted me a photo, the old Hale & Kinsey building with a for lease banner across the glass. The caption just said, "Guess Karma does quarterly reports too." I stared at it for a while, then deleted it. Not out of bitterness, out of peace. Some endings don't need witnesses. That night, I made coffee, sat by the window, and opened my laptop. My inbox was empty for the first time in years. No deadlines, no fake urgencies, just space. I wrote one last email to myself. You didn't burn out, you were burned, and you walked out of the fire alive. I didn't send it, I just saved it in drafts. A reminder that some victories don't roar, they exhale. They say revenge is best served cold. They're wrong. It's best served calm, in silence, with evidence, and no need for applause. Martin taught me that. He taught me silence, and I used it to bury him. He tried to pull me down with him. 2 days after the town hall, I got an email from an unknown address. No name, just a string of numbers. The subject line, "Let's talk before this gets worse." No greeting, no signature, but I didn't need one. The tone was pure Martin Hale, the blend of arrogance and desperation that only a man who's lost control could write. I know you think you've won something here, but the story you've told isn't complete. People like us don't get to just walk away clean. If you want to make this painless for both of us, meet me tonight. Parking lot behind Hale & Kinsey, 9 p.m. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same man who ignored my calls while I was on the floor now wanted me to meet him in the dark. I didn't respond, but I went. The lot was half lit, the air cold enough to sting. Martin stood near the loading dock, his suit wrinkled, tie loose. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked human. The kind of human that knows the universe doesn't owe him an audience anymore. "You shouldn't have come," he said. I know. He ran a hand through his hair. They're trying to make me the fall guy. You sent that email to the wrong people, Ethan. You didn't just expose me. You exposed the whole structure. I let the words hang there. He wanted a reaction, a crack. You made choices, I said quietly. Now you're seeing the invoice. His eyes flashed. You think you're a hero? You're not. You're just a clerk who weaponized paperwork. I'm fine with that, I said. Paperwork's permanent. He laughed, short, hollow. You think they'll keep you? You embarrass them. You cost them face with the board. They'll freeze you out quietly, and when you walk, no one will remember your name. Then I'll walk, I said, but you'll still be gone. He stepped closer, voice low, trembling. You don't get it, do you? This company was me. You just set fire to the only bridge you'll ever need. I met his gaze. Then I'll build my own. He looked like he wanted to hit me. Instead, he just shook his head, turned, and walked into the dark. That was the last time I saw him. 3 weeks later, an internal memo confirmed it. Termination upheld, severance forfeited, due to ethical violations. HR dressed it in formal language, but the truth was simple. Martinhale was radioactive, and the company wanted distance. People said he'd moved to another state. Others said he was consulting under a new name. I didn't care, because by then I wasn't there either. Leaving wasn't dramatic. I didn't slam doors or make speeches. I drafted my resignation at home, one quiet Sunday night. No bitterness, no flourish. Just this. After recent events, I've realized my health and values no longer align with the company's direction. Effective immediately, I resign. Sarah cried when I told her. You built half this place, she said. I just kept it from collapsing, I replied. Now it's not my job to hold it up. She hugged me hard. You deserved better. I got it, I said, and I meant it. The first week without Hale and Kinsey felt like stepping off a treadmill that had been running too fast for years. The silence in my apartment wasn't empty anymore. It was honest. I slept late, cooked real food, read things that weren't project briefs. I went outside and realized how long it had been since I'd seen daylight at 2 p.m. Then on Friday morning, my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Cole, a woman's voice said, this is Karen from the State Labor Board. We've received your documents from Hale and Kinsey's Compliance Division. Would you be available for a follow-up regarding potential violations of employee safety regulations? I almost smiled. The company had handed over everything, probably trying to prove their transparency. They didn't realize that meant they'd handed over themselves. Of course, I said. I'll bring the originals.